So what lessons can we learn from the struggles, for example, in Africa, when in the 60s and the 70s, people were fighting for their liberation to actually throw off the shackles of colonialism? What are those lessons? Women were in the forefront, even to the point of carrying arms and being in the liberation armies. What lessons can we learn from that? Some of those sisters, a few of them are still alive. They need to be here. The South African sisters, one lesson I learned is that the struggle does not end once you so-called think that you have gotten rid of the colonizers. Because what some of them told us is that we should have been paying attention to you in America. Because you got the vote, but you don't have no power. You don't own nothing, and neither do we. And neither do we. South Africa is one of the richest countries in Africa in terms of resources, and the former colonizers and U.S. imperialism and all those other imperialists, they still own the major mines. They still control the major cartels of diamonds. They still own the auto factories, and they still own the majority of the land. The sisters who were in the forefront of the struggle in South Africa were co-opted into governmental positions and over commissioners of this and that. And what happened to the very strong women's movement they have in South Africa, that it has gone down the tubes. No direction, no militancy, and confusion. Because some of their best leaders were co-opted into a process that was not about liberation. So we have to learn lessons from that, but we need to learn the lessons because they need to be at conferences like this. We need to have the sisters and brothers who are indigenous and who are African descent in Latin America, who are fighting for reparations and winning, fighting back for their land. They need to be at this conference or any future conferences that we have. Because this is today. This is not 100 years ago. This is right now. How do they organize? How are they winning? The sister Olivia Santos, who wrote all the anti-racist legislation in Brazil, she should have been here. She should have been here, because she continues to fight, and she will challenge anybody who tries to marginalize anybody of African descent. She should have been here. We need to look at many other groupings of people because we have the burden to organize the world. That's the burden that we have, because no struggle is going to be successful in any region or any country if we don't always also have the connections of all of us together. And not just at social forums, at 100 workshops, running around, splitting each other up, but really at gatherings that seriously tackle the issues like you are doing here this weekend. Really seriously examining what the issues are, but also examining what the solutions should be and how do we organize around those. So one of the lessons I think we could possibly take away from here is a lesson also in terms of what we must do to broaden the effort of militant, revolutionary women around the world. We need to put aside hegemonic and little rhetorical splitting of our views of things that then prohibit us from being together, and we need to find what our commonalities are. We also, though, cannot unite, and this was a challenge that came up in the labor workshop. We cannot build, no relationship is based on dishonesty. No relationship, a good relationship, is based on concealing things or pretending that they don't exist when they're problematic. So racism cannot be swept under the rug. Racism must be brought out to light, and we must tackle it, and we must talk about how to organize with that issue that faces us. Particularly the misconceptions that the ruling class has implanted in a lot of people's minds about other people. So we have to deal with the issue of how people view in our community of why are we uniting with Mexicans when they're taking our jobs. And on the other hand, the Mexican workers have to deal with and understand that we're not lazy and shiftless and don't know how to work, and that's why they brought you here to work. which is what they were told when they were brought to New Orleans, and that's what many people were told when they came to the United States. And that's not just between us and Mexicans, it's also between us and some Caribbean workers. The ruling class are masters. They remind me of pimps. Let me find your vulnerability and your confusion, I'm gonna play it to the max. So you won't be able to align yourself with the resources and the people that you need to be with. So they have us at odds with each other when we should really be strongly identified and united with each other, feeling each other's pain and willing to fight and sacrifice alongside of each other. So those are issues that we need to talk about and not be afraid to talk about them. We should explain to people that Mexican and other immigrant workers didn't fire you and they didn't hire themselves. They didn't give themselves the lower wages and put you aside. It was the boss who fired you, didn't hire you, and fired them. It was the boss who gave them slave wages and wouldn't let them unionize, not them doing it to themselves. So when we begin to identify and call out who the culprit is, we always come to the ugly monster of the imperialists and the bosses and the capitalists. And those are the people that we need to be focused on. When we can get our garbage out of the way between ourselves, we'll be more stronger in terms of identifying all of the ways in which the imperialists try to keep us divided and how we have to work together. If you're at a workplace, I've worked at a few multinational workplaces, sometimes being the only black person, that's what made it multinational, because I was the only black person there. And wound up being the shop steward of that particular workplace. And we were divided every way except the people who had degrees were divided from the people who didn't have degrees. The immigrant Russian workers were divided from the Jewish, American-born workers, and everybody was against the few little black people they had. So, but when it came down to us organizing around critical issues, we all had to work together. So we had to focus on an educational process that explained who was really creating the problem among us. To the point of consciousness that when the boss came and said he's going to lay off X number of people, the workers all got together and said, no, we don't want those workers laid off. We will give up a day. And if you continue to try to lay them off, we're going to go on strike. But that took time and effort. It took one dealing with the fact that there was racism. And there was also a religious difference. We were not Jews. And so the question was, why should we even be in leadership of a workplace? The reason why we were selected as leadership or voted on was because people saw our fighting spirit. So the issue was, are we going to all be fighters together? And are we going to deal with the differences that exist? Because they have been told lies about black people. They have been told lies about who we were, just like the ruling class tells lies about all of us and about women across the world. So we have to address that issue of building the kind of strong relationships that's based on honesty, that's based on not being afraid. If we are afraid to confront this issue, then I don't believe that any of us can confront the imperialists. So we have to be able to confront those issues. And we have to deal with it. If something is wrong, it's wrong. Let's correct it and move forward. If something is a misconception, let's educate and change it. If something is based on someone who just doesn't want us to be united, they need to not be part of it. And all of us who do want to be united, we need to hang in there together.